Emily lived in a corner of the world that most people forgot existed, a one-bedroom unit on the third floor of a cracked building that smelled of boiled cabbage in winter and mildew in summer. No one asked about her. No one remembered who she used to be. But Emily didn't mind the quiet. Not anymore. She had grown used to it the way people get used to aching knees or fading eyesight. It didn't hurt all at once. It just became normal. Her mornings started before the sun. She made her tea in silence, toasted the same slice of bread she always did, thin, just barely golden. Then she sat by the window. Always the same chair, the same chipped mug, the same old photo of a girl with wild curls and a missing front tooth taped to the wall. That was Madison, age 9, before the magazines, before the stage lights, before the lie. Emily worked night shifts at the county hospital for 22 years, not as a nurse, not even as a receptionist. She scrubbed the floors, mopped up the vomit, cleaned the blood no one talked about. She once saved a kid's life by yelling for help when she saw his monitor flatline. No one knew. No one asked. She just went back to scrubbing. She didn't mind, because at the end of each shift, she came home to a little girl who hugged her so tightly it made her forget how alone she really was. That girl grew up and stopped calling. Now, at 67, Emily's only company was the creaking pipes, the broken heater in December, and a box of letters under her bed she never mailed. Letters to Madison. Letters that began with "Hi, baby," and ended with "I miss you." Every birthday, every graduation she never got invited to, every press release where Madison called herself self-made and motherless. Emily read them all, and she forgave. She always forgave. But that morning was different. There was something in the air. A tug, a whisper. Maybe it was the way the sun spilled through the curtain just right. Maybe it was the smell of oranges from the garden downstairs. She stepped outside in her slippers, hands trembling slightly from arthritis, and picked 6 fruits, warm from the sun, still glowing with that golden orange that used to make Madison clap her hands as a child. Emily peeled one just to remember. Still perfect, still sweet. She placed the rest in a brown paper bag and held it against her chest. That day, after 17 years, she decided she would see her daughter again. Not to beg, not to accuse, but just to say hello. Emily didn't take a cab. She couldn't afford one. And even if she could, there was something sacred about walking. Each step felt like a heartbeat, slow, uncertain, heavy with memory. The streets had changed. The corner grocery was now a luxury pet spa. The bakery Madison used to beg to visit on weekends had been replaced by a marble-pillared yoga studio. Time had scrubbed the old neighborhood clean, almost as if it too wanted to forget where Madison came from. Emily held the paper bag tightly against her chest. Inside, the oranges shifted softly with her steps. She could still feel their warmth through the paper, like tiny suns in her hands. The gate to the estate loomed ahead, cold and gleaming. Her breath hitched. $10 million. Stone and glass and buzzed security. But Emily wasn't thinking of the cameras or the columns. She was thinking of the last time she had held her daughter, really held her. Madison was 12, sick with pneumonia. Emily had spent 3 nights sleeping upright in a plastic hospital chair, holding her daughter's hand through the fever, humming lullabies through cracked lips. Now Madison was a CEO, a symbol of strength. A woman who built an empire on the ashes of a past she called tragic, a past that had a name, Emily. She approached the gate. It buzzed, clicked, opened. No alarms, no guards, just silence. She walked through. The path curved like a question mark. The house, no, the mansion, rose into view like something out of a magazine. It glowed white in the sun, polished, sharp, untouchable. Emily's shoes crunched softly on the gravel. Her hands trembled, but she didn't stop. "Maybe," she whispered, "just maybe, she remembers." The door opened. At first, it was just a sliver of movement light from the foyer spilling out onto the steps like golden water. Then Madison appeared. She looked like someone from a magazine. Hair in a sleek bun, white blazer, crimson lipstick. Not a single detail out of place. But her eyes, those were Emily's eyes, and they widened in panic. "Mom," she breathed, barely audible. Then louder, urgent, "Why are you here?" Emily smiled, gently lifting the bag. "I brought you some oranges, sweetheart. They're fresh from the garden." That Madison didn't smile. She stepped forward, glanced behind her, then back at Emily. Inside, voices buzzed, laughter, glasses clinking. The media was here. "You can't be here," Madison hissed. "Do you know who's inside? The press, the board. They think—" She stopped herself. "They think my mother died when I was 6.
Emily blinked. "What?" "I told them," Madison whispered harshly. "It's part of the story, part of the brand. I'm a self-made survivor. Don't ruin this." Emily stood still, oranges trembling in the paper bag. Madison's voice dropped low, sharp as a knife. "You're not part of my life anymore. You're a liability." Then she did the unthinkable. She shoved her, hard. Emily lost balance. Her heel caught the edge of the top step. The paper bag ripped.
The oranges spilled, rolling, bouncing, bursting open like little suns. Emily landed on her knees. The stone scraped her skin. Blood from her leg mixed with the juice of the crushed fruit. Madison didn't help her, didn't even flinch. She turned, peeked behind the door to make sure no one saw, then slammed it shut. Inside, the laughter resumed. Emily didn't go home right away. She sat across the street on a bench, knees bleeding, oranges spilled, breath shallow. But what broke her wasn't the fall. It was what she saw next. The front door opened again. Only this time, Emily wasn't supposed to see it. She had stepped off to the side, hidden by the column near the shrubs, just out of sight. Inside the house, lights flashed. Reporters stood in a loose semicircle around the entryway. Then Madison stepped forward. She wasn't alone. She held the hand of another woman, older, elegant, soft eyes and white curls. She wore pearls and a shawl. She smiled like someone rehearsed to be beloved. And then Madison said it. "This is my mother." The cameras clicked. Someone gasped. Another wiped a tear. "She raised me through the hardest years," Madison said, voice shaking just enough to sound human. "I was in and out of foster care. She worked 3 jobs. She sold her wedding ring to send me to college." Emily's hand clutched the column, tight. That was her life. Those were her stories. But they were no longer hers. They now belonged to a stranger. A woman Madison had chosen not just to lie, but to replace the mother who stood outside bruised watching the charade. And worse, they believed it, because that woman smiled. She dabbed her eyes with a lace handkerchief. She squeezed Madison's hand gently, nodding along. Emily felt her chest collapse inward. She had been erased, and her role recast. Emily didn't blink, not once. She stood behind the stone column like a statue, rooted, breath held, invisible. The sound of Madison's voice rolled out from the open door, like perfume and poison mixed in one. "She's why I built healing from nothing," Madison told the cameras. "She showed me what love looks like, even when the world had none to offer." The crowd inside nodded. Some teared up. One reporter even whispered, "She's incredible." Emily's nails dug into the stone. She could feel the texture cut into her skin, grounding her. She had to, because otherwise she might scream. Her lips trembled, but she didn't cry. Inside, the woman playing mom wiped another fake tear. She smiled just right, tilted her head at the perfect angle. She looked like every Hollywood version of a gentle mother, soft voice, kind eyes, no rough edges. And Madison, she sold it. She weaved Emily's struggles into a performance. The cold nights Emily had spent sewing school uniforms by hand now belonged to someone else. The lunch boxes packed with coins she begged for were now props in another woman's fairy tale. Emily felt her knees grow weak, and yet she did not move. She stood through all of it, the applause, the photo flashes, the manufactured grace. She had never been glamorous, never had perfect lighting or sympathetic lighting, but she was real. And that day, the world applauded the woman who had been chosen to replace her. Emily didn't knock, didn't interrupt, didn't say a word. She just watched as her love was stolen and turned into someone else's brand. Emily didn't scream. She didn't storm the house. She didn't pound on the door or shout Madison's name. She simply turned away, step by step, like a ghost, as if the weight of what she'd seen was too heavy to carry upright. The bag was gone. The oranges were gone. The daughter, gone long ago, she now realized, was never coming back. People talk about heartbreak like it's a single moment, like it explodes inside you. But this was slower. It was hollowing, like air leaving a room, like light fading from a photo, like becoming invisible in real time. Her legs moved, but her thoughts stood still. Why me? What did I do so wrong that my own child would replace me? She thought of birthdays spent sewing dresses from donated cloth, of skipped meals so Madison could have lunch money, of the time she walked 5 miles in the rain just to bring her daughter the inhaler she forgot at home. None of it mattered now. Her daughter had rewritten the story and erased the author. Emily didn't cry, not because it didn't hurt, but because the pain was too deep for tears. It settled in her bones, in her chest, in the silence she carried all the way back to her bus stop. She sat on the plastic bench, legs trembling, heart a fist inside her ribs. Behind her, cameras flashed. Strangers applauded the lie. And Emily, she whispered to herself, I was real. I was there. I loved her first. But no one heard. Emily didn't want revenge. She wasn't planning a confrontation. There would be no headlines, no interviews, no viral videos. She just wanted the truth, to be remembered. That night, after the oranges dried on the pavement and the laughter faded inside that mansion, Emily sat at her kitchen table. She lit a small candle and opened a phone book that hadn't been touched in years. She ran her fingers down the smudged pages until she found the name. Will T. Monroe, private investigator, retired law enforcement, discreet, affordable. The next morning she called. Will answered in a gruff voice. Monroe? Emily hesitated. Then I need help. I'm not trying to ruin anyone. I just want to prove I was here. They met at a quiet diner 2 days later. Will looked exactly how she hoped. No-nonsense plaid shirt, strong hands. He didn't judge. He didn't flinch. He just listened. She slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside, a few photos of Madison as a child, handwritten letters, and a printed headline, Madison Hale, from orphan to empire. Will nodded once. That woman in the video. The one your daughter introduced as her mother, do you know who she is? Emily shook her head. Not yet, she said, but I think she's wearing my story. Will smiled slightly. Then let's find out what's real. Will worked fast. He didn't need much. A few screenshots, the press conference footage, the name Margaret Ellis, the one Madison had introduced as her mother. Within a week, Will returned with a file, worn, thick, confidential. He sat across from Emily, eyes serious. I found her, he said. She's not Margaret Ellis. That's one of 5 aliases she's used. Emily felt her breath catch. Her real name is Deborah Ann Kilroy, born 1958 in Kansas. She has no children, never adopted, never fostered, no medical record of childbirth. Emily blinked. She's not just a fraud, Will said. She's a professional. He slid the file closer. Inside were 3 printed articles. Each one featured a different woman, a different CEO, smiling on stage beside Deborah. 2012, daughter reunites with lost mother after 30 years. 2015, luxury fashion founder discovers her mother is alive. 2018, tech pioneer credits miracle mom for her rise. Each story had the same arc. Each daughter had once claimed to be orphaned. Each had built a business on personal pain, and each had introduced Deborah under a different name as the long-lost mother who had returned just in time. And every single time, Deborah disappeared, along with money, sponsorships, donations, retreat fees, private foundations wiped clean. Emily's hand shook as she held the photos. This woman took my place," she whispered. Will nodded. "And not just yours." The meeting wasn't planned by lawyers. There was no camera, no press, just 2 women who had worn the same title in silence, Mother. Emily asked Will to arrange it. No threats, no anger, just a quiet booth at a coffee shop 2 towns over. When Deborah walked in, Emily noticed she looked older than in the videos, tired, thin, but still dressed in beige and pearl earrings like the version of Mother she had sold to the world. Deborah sat across from her and said nothing at first. Then her lips quivered. "I've never had a child," she said. "I watched Madison on a panel last year. She said her mother died when she was 6. I wrote to her, told her I lost a daughter at birth." A pause. "She offered to pay for everything if I helped her story feel more human." Emily stared. Deborah's voice cracked. "I said yes, because I wanted to be called Mom at least once in my life. I didn't know you were real." Silence. Emily looked down at her cold tea. Then, with a voice steadier than Deborah's tears, she said, "I don't blame you, Deborah." Deborah blinked in shock. Emily continued, "You're not the one who erased me. My daughter did." At the back of her closet, under a blanket that still smelled faintly of baby powder, Emily pulled out the tin box. She hadn't opened it in 15 years. It rattled slightly in her hands, like it was nervous too. She placed it on the kitchen table, sat down, and opened the lid. Inside were fragments of a life no one else remembered. A crayon drawing stick figures labeled Me and Mom standing under an orange tree. A faded hospital gown size XS with Property of St. Rose Pediatrics printed on the collar, a 5th grade poem titled Why My Mom is the Strongest, and dozens of handwritten letters, some yellowed, some smudged with tears, all signed Love Madison. Emily touched each one like porcelain. These weren't stories, they were evidence, not of crimes, but of truth. She looked at them for a long time, then whispered, "I'm not doing this for revenge. I just want the world to know I was once somebody's mother." Emily didn't call a lawyer. She didn't write a blog. She turned her kitchen into a crime lab of memory. She took photos of everything inside the tin box, labeled each file Poem, 5th grade, Hospital Gown, 2004, Drawing, Tree plus Mom. Then she did something that would make anyone stop and stare. She compared Madison's childhood handwriting from the letters with the adult signature on her TED Talk merch. It matched perfectly. Next, she pulled out something even more powerful, a USB drive from her neighbor. Inside security footage from that afternoon, from the exact moment Madison opened the door and shoved her biological mother down the stairs. The oranges rolled down the steps. Emily didn't scream, but the camera heard everything. She uploaded it to a private folder titled My Name is Emily. She stared at the screen, then clicked Send to 3 people. A journalist from The Guardian, a former investor in Madison's startup, and Madison herself. Within 22 hours, the video had 4 million. 7 million views. The video hit 5 million views in less than a day. By the second day, Twitter, or X, was flooded with 3 hashtags. Hashtag Justice for Emily, hashtag Real Mother Lives, hashtag Oranges Don't Lie. Influencers stitched the footage. Doctors pointed out the bruising on Emily's knees. Even therapists began analyzing Madison's body language during the shove. The world was no longer buying her tragic orphan story. Madison's startup shares dropped 40% overnight. 3 sponsors terminated their contracts. A live podcast appearance was canceled mid-air after the host said, "We do not support fraud, especially against your own mother." But Emily, she didn't tweet. She didn't speak to the press. She simply sat in her garden holding one orange and whispered, "I'm not here to destroy her. I just needed the world to know I existed." The call came at 10:12 p.m. Emily almost didn't answer. She didn't recognize the number, but something told her this was the call she was meant to receive. "Mom?" The voice on the line cracked. "It's Madison." Emily said nothing. "I need help," Madison continued. "They're suing me. The investors, the sponsors, everyone. They say I lied. They say I faked you. They want everything back." Emily still said nothing. "I know you have money," Madison added, desperate now. "I looked up that settlement you got from the accident. I know you're okay. I need a loan, just until this blows over." Emily finally spoke softly. "You erased me to build your empire, and now that it's burning, you want me to save it?" Silence. Then Madison sobbed, "I didn't mean to." Emily didn't hang up. She just whispered, "No, Madison, you didn't mean for me to survive." Click. The tabloids called her the forgotten mother, but Emily, she was never forgotten by herself. She had bought a stretch of land 27 years ago on the recommendation of a nurse friend just after Madison left for college. At the time, it was just sandy shoreline, worth almost nothing. Now, developers were offering $1.3 billion to build resorts on that land. Emily never sold. She didn't need the money. She just liked watching the ocean. When the story broke, reporters flooded the small town looking for her. But Emily was already gone, quietly. Madison tried again, this time on camera, crying, trembling, holding a photo of her as a child. "She's the only mother I've ever had. I made mistakes, but please, if she's watching, Mom, please talk to me. Help me. I love you." But Emily didn't respond, because for the first time in her life, she had nothing left to prove. The final call came. Madison, now broken, bankrupt, betrayed by the very woman she called Mom on stage. "I was wrong," she said. "I lied. I hurt you. I don't deserve your help. But if you still have anything left in your heart, please." Emily listened quietly. Then she spoke clearly, slowly, as if carving the words into stone. "The day you closed the door on your real mother, another door opened. To hell." A pause. "And I'm not opening any more doors for you." Click. That was it. Not revenge, not cruelty. Just the end of a sentence 30 years long. For the first time, Emily's voice was not a whisper. It was a verdict. The orange had burst on the pavement that day, juice mixing with her blood, seeds sticking to her sweater. Emily picked one up. Just one, not out of spite, out of instinct. She brought it home, dug a shallow hole behind her small cottage, and dropped the seed in. She watered it quietly, never told anyone. No one cared. But the earth did. The years passed. 1 leaf, then 5, then branches. Now the orange tree stood taller than her roof, arms stretched wide, offering fruit to anyone who passed by. Children from the neighborhood came to pick 1 or 2. She never said no. One child once asked, "Did you plant this?" Emily smiled. "No, sweetie, it planted me." It started with a knock on the fence. A little voice, "Can I have an orange?" Emily turned. A girl, maybe 8, freckles, tangled hair, eyes too big for her face. She looked like Madison once did. Emily smiled and handed her one. The next day, the girl came again. Then the next. One afternoon, as the sun dipped behind the tree, the girl sat on Emily's porch, eating her orange slowly. Out of nowhere, she said, I wish you were my real grandma." Emily blinked. The words didn't hurt. They healed. She looked at the girl, this stranger, this child, this miracle, and whispered, "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." From that day on, the girl called her Granny. Not for show, not for press, but because love found its way. The calls came fast. 3 major talk shows, 2 book deals, a film studio offering 7 figures. "Emily," they said, "your story is powerful. The world needs to hear it." But Emily said, "The people who mattered already heard it. The rest just want to watch." She hung up. No interviews, no memoirs, no cameras chasing her past, just mornings with orange blossoms and laughter from the girl next door. "I don't want to perform being a mother," Emily once told a friend. "I just want to live like one." And so she did, quietly, fully, truly. They came in plain envelopes, no logos, no promises. Just handwriting shaky, messy, real. One said, "Because of you, I hugged my mom longer today. Thank you for reminding me she's not replaceable." Another wrote, "I used to be ashamed of my mother's accent. Now I'm learning to speak it." Some sent oranges, others sent poetry. One girl sent a crayon drawing of a tree and wrote, "This is for your cam tree. I hope it grows forever." Emily sat in her kitchen reading. She didn't cry. She just smiled, like someone who finally got heard without shouting. She folded the letters, placed them in a box, labeled it, "For When I Forget the Good." Emily never called Madison back, not after the media storm, not after the lawsuits, not even when Madison showed up one rainy evening standing by the gate, silent. Emily watched from the window, then turned away, not out of hate, but out of peace. Forgiveness, she realized, isn't always a reunion. It's the decision not to let pain pilot your life anymore. She picked the last orange from the tree, not to eat it, but to plant its seeds in a new pot. "You don't need to go backward," she whispered, pressing her palm against the dirt. "You just need to grow forward." The tree was taller now, its leaves thick with memory. Emily sat on the porch, a book on her lap, not a memoir, just a borrowed novel. The sun hit the leaves just right, scattering light like confetti. Lily came running from next door, barefoot, holding 2 cups of lemonade. "Granny," she said, "do orange trees remember people?" Emily smiled. "They don't need to," she said softly. "People remember them." The camera pulled back, past the porch, past the tree, past the quiet street. Emily stayed small in the frame, but impossibly full. And the final line whispered as the screen faded, "A real mother never truly disappears, even when they try to erase her." Real love doesn't need to be broadcast. It just needs room to breathe. Emily didn't write a memoir. She didn't go on TV. She didn't scream. She chose dignity. She chose kindness. She chose truth. In a world obsessed with noise, she became a quiet thunder. If you've ever felt forgotten, erased, or pushed aside, remember this. Your worth isn't measured by who sees you. It's defined by how you stay true to yourself. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone who loved you quietly without asking for credit, subscribe to this channel, not just for more powerful stories, but to help keep truth, empathy, and quiet strength alive in a noisy world.